Board members, thank you for your patience. Public, thank you for your patience as we work to keep up with what is happening here. We are on agenda item 14. This is a general legislative session preparation. You'll notice that we have three items in 14. 14.1 is requests for statutory changes. 14.2 is board requested legislative funding. And 14.3 is legislative policy and funding items. And so as you have motions, just keep those agenda items in mind. We are going to begin with agenda item 14.1, the request for statutory changes. And just so you know, the handout that was just given, this would fall under 14.3 legislative policy and funding items. So before we get ahead of ourselves on what we had just been handed, we are still on agenda item 14.1. With that, Deputy Superintendent Nui, will you go ahead and begin, and then we'll go from there.
To save time, I'll go through all three items after you carefully identified each one. So the first one, request for statutory changes. You all have made those since August. If you remember, things in code that you want changed. We've been working on those as a policy team. Some of those you'll see in bills that we're going to present to you in item number 3. However, if you have any additional ones, we could still do that now. It's a little late in the season, but we absolutely can try. Item number 2, you'll see that there is an updated legislative funding handout. So if you're talking to any legislators, that now reflects the motion that was made last Thursday to update your funding request to a top 5 instead of a top 8 or 9. So that is in backup as well. If you'd like a physical copy, we can get you those by the end of today as well. And then I could just move to item 3 if you think we're ready.
Let's look at item 14, agenda item 14.1 first. I have Member Davis, but I'm not sure what agenda item you're looking for. Member Davis. Okay, so we're going to be on item 14.3. So are there any lights or any action for 14.1 requests for statutory changes? I'm not seeing any, and with that, I would say thank you, because I don't know how to approach any legislators at this point. So let's move on to item 14.2. This is the board requested legislative funding. And are there any lights to that 14.2? Member Bogus?
My light is only on so you don't arbitrarily rule my motion out of order.
Oh my, here we go. Okay. I'll put you in the queue.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have is it a financial one in accordance with the legislative funding? Okay, Vice Chair Wood.
I need to worry.
Member Bogus, if your motion is towards the funding, whether it's the priorities or the 5% reduction, 14.2 would be an appropriate place. So I've got Member Davis for 14.3. If you want to jump in at 14.2, go ahead. Okay, Member Bogus.
Thank you. I move that the board remove the Beverly Taylorson Sorensen program from the list of recommended reductions in our motion to the PEA.
So the motion, let's get that correct here. It's been pre-seconded, but let's make sure we get it correct, and then you can speak to it. That the board remove, I don't know if we want the recommended or just, yeah, that the board remove the Beverly Taylor Sorensen program from the list of recommended reductions to or for PEA. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Sorensen is S-O-N.
Sorenoon. There it is. Perfect. we don't want any tricks saying, hey, we said Sorensen, not Soren. Yeah, okay. Was a bad joke? Okay.
No tricks,
Go to you,
board.
Member Bogus, to speak to that.
Sure, I miss. I am so thankful that we passed the putting BTS back on our legislative priorities, but it's kind of a mixed message to cut them a certain amount of money and then add a certain amount of money. It's a very mixed message. And we talked openly in our last capital meeting about how when funding remains stagnant, it's actually reducing the number of students served. And so we have some data. My understanding is that it was sent to your inbox at 2:23. My colleague sent it to you. So there's some data there. And would you like me to review that, Member Booth? Or okay. So if you review the data that Member Booth sent you, the BTS ALP summary found below that in Utah, it serves a total of 337,131 K-6 students statewide. The program currently reaches about 243,000 students alone through its initiatives. It's implemented across 51 charter schools and 466 schools in 39 districts. Additionally, the program supports artist and residency programs, particularly in rural regions, utilizing the legislature's SY26 allocation of $19.4 million. This current year, districts and charters have partnered with the legislature in matching funds in the amount of approximately 35% or $7 million in order for the program to reach so many of Utah's children. The ongoing financial support from Beverly and her family has, to this point, contributed $45 million to the development and continuation of this program. If the legislature maintains the same funding for SY27 as this current year, outreach will decrease by 13,000 students, reducing program participation from 243,000 to 230,000 students. The number of schools involved will also drop from 466 to 441, resulting in 25 fewer schools served. This reduction means that 13,000 students who benefited from the program this year will not have access to the same program next year, and no new districts from the waiting list of 33 schools will be added. An increase in legislative funding and no decrease, raising the total from $19.4 million to $21.1 million, would allow the BTS program to maintain its service for those 13,000 students and all of the other students it serves, and expand to 23 new schools, benefiting an additional 14,000 students. And this adjustment would leave just 10 schools remaining on the waiting list for future consideration. And so I think this is a move that is logical. I think it's appropriate. I think it matches the board's priorities, and I would ask you to support the motion. Thank you.
Scott, do you want to tell us what that looks like? If because I don't know how much money that is, right? Can you just?
Well, so yes, Chair, that I was going to ask. So I think the intent of this motion is to remove it from both sheets 1 and 2, right? Because it does do that. So
That would be correct,
So
yeah.
yes, okay, yeah. So we would reduce, or not reduce it. We would take those off both sheets 1 and 2. So
And would we just tell the PEA that we have a deficit now, or would we have to readjust? Not that that's the motion is not to readjust, but what
Right.
would
it would
Vice
just
Chair
be
Wood need to tell PEA?
that by removing them from sheets 1 and 2, you're saying that you want to keep the base budget amount, right? Because the base budget amount would the current level of the appropriation we get,
Thank you.
which is approximately 19 million, I think. So,
Okay.
but I'll get the exact number before tomorrow.
19 million is not what we're seeking for a reduction, right? Or did we seek to?
No, well, so if we could pull up sheets 1 and 2, you can see, because remember sheets 2 was 6% of programs, 6 to 7%, and the other one was, I think, the full amount. No,
Okay.
Or-
I thought it was about 7% on both plans 1
well,
and 2.
that's why we need to pull sheets 1 and 2
Okay.
up. So
And
yeah.
as those are being pulled, Member Earl, you had a question?
Yeah, and I guess this is just a general, so we're still asking for an increase. We're saying take this off so it doesn't have the 6% or whatever that percent cut was. So that money that would have been cut, are we going to have to find programs now to cut more? That's what you're asking, okay? Or does it, all
Oh,
those
I
other
see. Oh, okay.
programs are cut additional amounts because we add this on? And then another question to add to that is, with the cut and then the adding to, what does that mean? I mean, where it stands right now, is that additional funds that still go, or is it below what we're funding currently? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
With just BTS or?
With just BTS,
Yeah,
I just
just
want to
BTS,
understand
we are saying, do not consider it to be cut at all, and with our priorities, add money to it.
Right, I understand that, but my question is, where does it stand right now? So we're saying cut and add, and when you add those together, is that a negative, or is that, so those two currently the way they are, we would have an additional 400 into the BTS program. So yes, whereas otherwise, okay, I'm just trying to figure out, if we don't do something though, we're still short what we would have cut, and we would have to find that, or other programs would be cut more, right? Okay.
Okay.
Scott?
So remember, with Beverly Taylor Sorensen, there's really two sources. There's the MSP categoricals, which is the administrative funds, right?
Yes.
And that's, let's see, 292, 200. Yes, 292, 200. Then, hold on. And I know it's close to 19 million, but I don't have the exact amount. But let's see, related to, yeah. So then the other amount is in the related to basic program, and that is 19,445,000
But we're
So-
asking to cut 6% of that, 7% of that
on sheet 2.
on sheet 2.
On sheet 2. So that's why, yeah. So it's worth it to bring both up, because I just want to make sure that we would take. So it's 6% of, well, it's a little more than 6%, but not quite 7% of 19,445,000 that you can see in that column. I don't know. I don't. So, which item number is it?
It's not.
This is Plan 2.
So that's sheet 2, but we gotta find. Well, so go on Plan 1 first. Find the Beverly Taylor Sorensen.
It's probably as BTS, maybe.
So currently, Scott, let's keep it here for a second.
So 1 million. Okay. Yep.
No, that answers my question.
So 1.6 million. Right, when you add those two together, it's roughly 1.6 million is what we're asking to cut, but we're asking for an increase of,
So, Chair, if I may.
Yes,
So
please.
basically, what you're asking for, from my understanding, is not to increase the amount of the MSP categorical. You're asking to increase the 19 million by that amount.
yes.
Yes. Okay. So, yeah.
Member Davis.
Right, but I think, well, sorry, Chair. So
That's
I won't
okay.
answer the question that wasn't a question.
Let's get the
So-
question asked.
Yes,
How's that?
okay, yes.
Member, first off, Member Earl, Member Davis, do you want to
Okay,
ask?
right. Okay.
Member Davis, do you want to ask your question? There you go.
Okay, so we're reducing the 19 million by 1.3-ish million. but then we asked to add the 1.7, so it would be an increase of about 400,000. So if we right now make this motion and move it, then we put back the 1.3 million. And then what does that do to the other programs? How does that change the percentage of the other programs of what because it doesn't change, it doesn't change them at all because they're still all at a 6%.
Correct.
We just lose the 13 million of our ongoing request of reduction.
Right, it just reduces the target amount.
From-
Or the amount towards the target.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry I stirred this up, Chair, but that's what we would need clarification on. Is it, you just want to completely remove it from your sheets 1s and 2s, right? So then that implies that you're not netting it out, right, with what you requested. It just implies that you want what you're requesting on your request sheet to add to the current base amount.
I believe that is the motion, yes. Just real quick, it is, nothing else has been addressed to rebalance or to
Right.
find the money from somewhere else. Just simply
Yep.
with this result, go to the PEA and say, this is what we're asking for.
Right,
And
and
if
we
they
have that
say-
opportunity in the morning.
Okay.
The leadership is expected to, you have about 15 minutes to update them on the changes you made to your requests and any changes you make to your recommendations for reductions in funding.
Yeah.
So-
Member Davis, go ahead.
Can we just get clarity on what our motion was? Because we're trying to remember, and we think we remember it being, take the difference that we were off, which was a lot, and split it equally amongst the remaining programs. So if we do take 1.3 out for BTS, it is going to increase the other programs if that, in fact, was the language of the motion, was to take the difference that we were off and split it equally amongst the remaining programs.
Okay, so go back to the sheet, please. So if you go to the top, you can see as a result of your method, keep going all the way to the top. So the target was 2.95. So in the yellow is where you're at. So if you're saying that, so basically if you take or eliminate Beverly Taylor Sorensen from any consideration for a reduction, you would be adding that amount, the amounts we have down in the lower part back to that yellow. Do you see what I'm
The
saying?
Scott,
1.5
But if
billion.
yeah, you'd be adding the 1.5 million back to that. So
So we'd actually be closer to our target.
no,
That's what we don't know. We're asking if the negative is we're over or under, and the negative is under.
oh no,
Would be
you're over.
farther.
We're over.
Yeah, you're over the
Okay,
target
so-
by way of the 6% that you took. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So then you would probably still be over your target. So we'd have to do the math. So if somebody wants to do the math, they can take that out. You still probably would be over the $295 million target. How much are we over the target? I don't know that off the top of my head. What?
We get over the target.
1.523. So it's close, right? You'd still be like right there. So.
It was supposed to be, but if it's not, then it won't hurt to.
There was some what?
That's helpful. Thank you. So the
Yeah.
motion before us, and just so the board is clear, we went over the target by 1.5 million.
Right.
We're requesting to not put BTS as part of the reduction, which would put in 1.3 million. So we would still be over
200.
about 200,000.
Right. Yes.
So we wouldn't have to readjust anything based on motions made in
No.
previous meetings.
No.
So with that understanding, I think we're on the same page. Let's bring up the motion then that is before us. I don't see any other questions, so let's bring up the motion and see if we can vote here. The motion is that the board remove the Beverly Taylor Sorensen program from the list of recommended reductions to PEA. Seeing no lights, let's vote. That motion passes 12 in favor, 2 in opposition. Those opposed coming from Member Hymus and Member Kelly. Okay, Vice Chair Wood.
I move to oppose the PEA recommendation to discontinue the USDB weighted salary adjustment.
So there's a motion to oppose the PEA staff recommendation. To remove the
Discontinue.
or to discontinue the USDB weighted salary adjustment. Is there a second? There's a second. Back to you, Vice Chair Wood.
So if you want a really great presentation, Deputy Superintendent Jones put together a 8-slide presentation on what this does, what it was for, why it happened, the historical perspective. But on slides 7 and 8, we see the consequences of this. It was originally designed because our USDB teachers were in the bottom of the barrel in terms of how much they were making. And so they would basically use USDB as a training ground and then move to a district to make more money. And they require a special education license plus their additional endorsements to be teachers of the blind or of the deaf. And so what this does, it helps create parity with other teachers in the districts. And so risk this, if they were to remove this, the consequences that were said were highly specialized teachers will choose neighboring districts with higher signing salary bonuses. State employee percentages are typically lower, and so we're going to create that gap again. The 2-year lag without the WASA adjustment, USDB salaries quickly fall behind, as seen as the early 2000s, leading to a catch-up cost that's more expensive than the annual adjustment. Vacancies lead to larger caseloads, potentially violating federal IDEA requirements. And then WASA is not a bonus, it's a market correction tool. It helps Utah's most vulnerable students be taught by qualified experts. The statutory formula provides transparency and fiscal accountability to the taxpayers. And I added, this one is just educator morale, what our USDB staff have gone through over the last year. I just want to vocalize my support for them. And hopefully, as a board, we can do that.
Member Davis.
I have a substitute motion. I move that the board direct Chair Wood and Vice Chair Booth and Deputy Jones or Assistant Superintendent Deborah Jacobson to work with PEA leadership to separate that from the discussions of the reductions. And I'd like, if I get a second, I'd like to speak to why.
Second. So there's a substitute motion, and this is that Chair Wood and Vice Chair Booth, for public information, chairs of the USDB Standing Committee, that these individuals work with PEA leadership to separate that.
To separate the USDB reduction.
Weighted salary adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
To separate the USDB salary adjustment reduction from the discussion of the reductions.
General reductions or overall reductions, I don't know. Yeah, I think it works. And I had a second. So may I speak, Chair?
Please, go ahead.
I really hesitate to oppose one piece of the PEA reductions because then it sends a message that we don't oppose all of the others. And we are the board for USDB. So I think it's appropriate to say, can our folks work with PEA leadership? Ask them to please separate this from their reductions. In effect, it would remove it, but it wouldn't, we wouldn't be up there with the language, well, we oppose this one thing when there, quite frankly, are a lot of things that we may or may not oppose in their recommendations. But this, I think, does it in a way that doesn't intimate we may support all their other things.
Okay. Member Kelly?
I was speaking to the original motion. And if I would like to hear from Board Member Wood on in terms of this substitute motion, but I think to take a formula and to take what has worked, which is to make USDB staff salaries, the teacher salaries competitive, and then to eliminate that, I think is a mistake. I think at the classroom level, that's where we should avoid making these cuts, and so I support the original motion.
So, okay, are you speaking against this motion then? Is that
No,
not necessarily?
No.
Okay. I've got Member Carey. Go ahead.
Yeah, this probably more of a point of information, but have we ever directed through motion specific individuals work with the legislature? Generally, it's we direct leadership or we direct staff. I'm more comfortable with having leadership select individuals than I am with the board deciding who it should be, just because I think it limits the flexibility of leadership in this area. But I just don't like the precedent. I mean, I have nothing against, well, maybe a little bit against Leanne, but nothing against No, I have nothing against Leanne or Randy, but I just, in leadership, I would rather just keep it general.
Yeah. Member Davis. And Scott, I see your lights on, but I don't know if are you speaking to this substitute motion or, okay. Okay. Let's get a response from Member Davis, and then we'll go to you, Scott.
That is fine with me. I'm just following this model on the paper they just gave us. And I was looking at bullet number 3, and it just looked like it was saying it would be helpful to have specific board members listed. So that's why I did that. But leadership is fine also. And I'd be happy to just, I don't know if there's a way to, I can, I mean, I'd be fine with leadership choosing. I'm guessing it would be those same people since they chair the committee. Yeah.
Most likely. Is there any opposition to changing this substitute motion to read that the board directs board leadership to work with PEA, and then we can assign as necessary? Is there any opposition to changing the motion? We haven't voted on it, just that portion, amendment to it. Okay. So this is going to be our new motion then, and that is that the board directs board leadership to work with PEA leadership to separate the USDB salary adjustment reduction from the discussion of the general reductions.
And I think we ought to take out the word discussion on the last line and just say to separate the USDB salary adjustment reduction from the general reductions. So it's not just, so it's clear we are wanting it to
right.
go away.
Again, an amendment to the amendment. Is there any opposition to removing that verbiage? Seeing none, this is the new motion then. And again, let me restate it, that the board directs board leadership to work with PEA leadership to separate the USDB salary adjustment reduction from the general reductions. Scott, clarity you're seeking for staff?
Yes, sir. Clarity for staff and likely for board leadership too, to talk to tomorrow, because the process is such that PEA will make their recommendations and their motions for recommendations at their Tuesday meeting. So is it the intent of this motion that before they make the recommendations that they receive from the legislative fiscal analyst, so would it be prudent to make the motion that we work with PEA not to recommend to EAC to change the WASA, or because it's moving forward already? I mean,
We've got a
okay. So, but for clarity, then, because tomorrow at 8:00 or 8:05 after they do their minutes, board leadership is to update on their requests, update on, what we just did with your recommendations for reductions. So it would be made abundantly clear that the board is asking for the PEA committee not to recommend to EAC, or not to take the recommendation of the LFA to EAC on the WASA.
Scott, if I could just respond, reading this motion as is, Member Wood, as a member of board leadership, recognizes that she is making a phone call tonight. It won't be, we won't sit at the table and bring this up because this is something that leadership is going to work with PEA leadership, but she's going to make a phone call tonight. So we will not bring this up, but we will make it known to those representatives. And I don't know if that helps, but according to this motion of what Member Davis is saying, this is not to be discussed at the table tomorrow.
That's what we needed clarity on.
Yeah.
So then to this point though, and in the interest of what, superintendent testified to, we always want to follow the direction of the board. So if you ratify this, then the only two things that we're doing at the table tomorrow is updating them on your requests. And then so far, just the change to the Beverly Taylor Sorensen thing. That's the only things that we'll bring up at the table. This is offline, so to speak.
Those were the only two changes. If the PEA leadership decided to ask, we would answer and say,
Okay.
yeah, this is the direction we'd like to
Right.
see.
Okay.
And I don't even mind saying what Member Davis has said already. We don't want to necessarily go through and say what we support your cuts, because we don't support these cuts, right? But if they ask, we will be truthful. Does that help? I know you have
Yes,
to
sir.
prepare these slides,
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes.
so get it right. No, I'm joking.
Right.
It's a challenge. It's
the rock in the hard place. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion before us is that the board directs board leadership to work with PEA leadership to separate the USDB salary adjustment reduction from the general reductions. Seeing no additional lights other than Scott's,
Sorry.
let's vote. So that motion fails. 9 opposed, 5 in favor. Those in favor being Member Longacre, Member Earl, Member Lear, Member Davis, and Member Booth. Okay, so this brings us to the original motion made by Vice Chair Wood. Do you have that writing again? Can I borrow that? The motion before us then is to move to oppose the PEA recommendation, or that the board oppose the PEA staff recommendation to discontinue the USDB weighted salary adjustment. Seeing no additional lights, let's vote. I hear you. That passes 13 in favor, 1 opposed, that opposition coming from Member Davis. Just, I don't want to take up too much time. We recognize the difficulty here. We'll do what we can as leadership, but Member Wood, speaking to this to me, says we are the only ones. We are the board for the USDB and feels it appropriate to stand up in that setting, although I get what you're saying as well, Member Davis. Right. So with that, Scott, you're back on.
So this does go into the slide then for tomorrow? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we are still on agenda item 14.2, board requested legislative funding. I don't see additional lights here. So I believe, Scott, you can start on those. We can get those slides ready. So let's move to agenda item 14.3, legislative policy and funding items. And we're going to invite Elise back up to the table. You're going to drive a lot of this for us. And board members, we would like to spend about 10 or fewer minutes on each bill. And if we can't get to a yes or a no vote, or if we get to a place where we need more information, then we can have conversations with legislators for more clarity or to make changes if we feel that they are needed. So with that, will you go ahead, Elise? And I want you to remember that Member Davis is first in this queue. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so we have passed out a list of potential bills to talk about today. I've also put them there in backup now. This is an updated version, so it's the same one that you have in front of you if you'd like to use the hyperlinks so that you can follow along in the bills as we go through them. So that's with item 14.3. The first few bills in this list we have talked about before and are also bills that this body has voted to support different aspects of these bills in previous meetings. So either you have voted for this statutory change and it's included in this bill, or we have voted in some other capacity. So hopefully these ones might be quick. The first one is HB 64. This impacts SITLA, so that's not our agency, but it does impact the ability of the school trust lands to make money that then comes into our school children's trust fund. So that might be one. We've talked about that, I believe, in December. Do you want me to pause and see if there's any motions, or how would you like? Sure. No, not at all. Bring up. Okay, we got this. So HB 64.
I do have a light from Member Davis, and I'm not sure, Member Davis, if it's on one of these bills on the list. The first 5. So let's at least cover the first 5.
Okay. HB 75 is from Representative Watkins. This one we did not request, but it is something that we have been doing that the American Indian and Alaska Native Education Committee worked with us to update so that it accurately represents what we're doing. And we talked about this one in a previous meeting as well. So this is HB 75. HB 463 is from Representative Miller. This is one of your board requests for statutory changes, and it changes the funding model for special education. And just came out very recently, so that's exciting. This would hopefully incentivize more integrated classrooms with special education students and still give that WPU to the schools to provide that services. And then we have HB 144 also from Representative Miller, which is our school community council amendments. That's another one that this body voted for a statutory change, and this simplifies the school community council code. A recent sub just came out as of like 10 minutes ago. That simplifies the language, takes away their responsibility to come up with a digital citizenship plan, but rather a more broad discussion about safety generally, which includes internet and online safety. So it kind of updates and makes current some of those requirements for school community councils. It also clarifies the language and simplifies it a bit. That's a really heavy piece of code, so we're trying to simplify it. So that's the first 4. And then the 5th one is HB 146. This wasn't a statutory change we asked for, but this board did prioritize the master teacher pilot program. And this bill would just make that a permanent program, no longer a pilot. So as this board previously voted to support that program, I thought that this might be another easy support vote. So that's the first 5.
Thank you. Member Davis.
Thank you. I move that the board support HB 64, HB 75, HB 463, HB 144, and HB 146 as we requested these folks to do these for us.
Okay, so the motion has been stated. Do we have a second? We have a second. Member Davis, would you like to speak to that?
Just every year I ask our staff, which ones did we request as a board? Because I feel like it's helpful for these people who essentially are doing a favor for us to support them for doing it. Thanks.
Member Bogus? There's a move to divide and a second. Back to you, Member Bogus.
I just think all these should be considered on their individual merits. So, like,
Okay,
we requested them that, but that doesn't mean we approve the language they're in.
sure.
So,
That's okay. So we have a move to divide. It's been seconded. Let's vote on that. Okay, voting is open. Right. Okay, that passes 10 in favor, 3 opposed, and 2 absent. Those opposed being Vice Chair Bollinger, Member Hymas, and Member Lear. So with that, let's look at the first one before us, and that is the motion is to support HB 64. Seeing no lights, let's go ahead and vote. Voting is open. That passes unanimously with 2 absent. Our next one on the agenda here is the move to approve HB 75. This is Representative Watkins, American Indian and Alaska Native Education Amendments. So let's, I don't see any lights on that one. Let's go ahead and vote. That passes 12 in favor, 1 opposed. That opposition coming from Member Bogus. Next up, we have HB, a motion to support HB 463, Representative Miller, Special Education Funding Amendments. Let's go ahead and vote. Aaron, I don't think. That passes unanimously with 1 absent. Next up, we have a motion to support HB 144, Representative Miller, School Community Council Amendments. Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. And maybe I missed the list. I didn't receive the list that was handed out today of all the bills for review and possible support until today. So I apologize if I missed that and everybody else received it, but I don't know if I fully understand the implications of HB 144, and I was hoping that staff could provide a general overview of. There's 2 sections of change in code. And could you just walk me through, I guess, what the changes on lines 72 through 76 would do? And then from 109 through 121. The rest of the changes are we're changing this semicolon to a dash, but those two chunks. Thank you.
There's the thing. Make sure on sub 2. Okay. So a second substitute just came out. So is that the line numbers, Board Member Carey, you're referring to?
I believe it is. Let me see.
But I can
No.
walk.
No, this is just the.
Okay, I can walk through the second sub though, if that's
Okay, that'd be better.
if that would be
Thank you.
helpful. Okay, so starting on lines 75, back in closer to the early 2000s, Representative Stratton worked with Paula Plant and the school community councils and the School Land Trust to have school community councils work on internet filtering. That was still relatively new for schools, so this was part of the school community council conversation. So he has worked with Paula Plant to take that language out, that very specific language about the filtering and the safety, and to make it a little bit more comprehensive. So you'll see the new language starting on 92. That the school district and administration will provide an annual report to the school community council to have a more robust conversation about safety in the school environment, which includes online experiences for students. So that's a much more comprehensive kind of vision of safety. And then if you go down, 122 just adds a line about documenting votes in the rules of order and procedure for the school community council. They have very strict rules about how they run their meetings, so that's part of that. Then 127 had this exception for in some of our schools. So every school, in order to get this funding, has to have a school community council. For the vast majority of schools, that's no problem. It's made up primarily of parents. It's supposed to be a majority parents and then have a few teachers and then one administrator. But in some of our school districts, for example, really small districts where the district is the number one employer, oftentimes the parents are also teachers either at that school or some other school in the district, right? So taking this prescriptive exception out and replacing it with, there was another line. Where is it? Where is it? If you look in the comparison to the other bill, it's in there. Yeah, this is sub 2. It just said that you can have parents who are employers. There just needs to be more non-employed parents than employed parents. So trying to keep the fidelity of that, we want a real parent perspective, but allowing parents who are employed somewhere in the district to also be a part of that school community council so they have a voice as well. Sorry, that was really unclear.
No, I think I tracked it. But that's not the default. That is
That's an exception.
And where is that language about this being an exception rather than the default?
Okay, so they just took out the exception altogether. Sorry, this one came out literally 10 minutes ago before I sat down. So I'm reading it with you. So it looks like they just took out the exception language and then they have to document how they came about the vote of how they came about the size. So that 122 to 123 is specific to the makeup of their community council.
So you're going to read and I'm going to talk and my students hate
I love that.
But
Go for
okay.
it.
So it looks like it's no longer an exception, but rather, as long as you can explain it.
It goes back to the original language, right? That the number of parents must exceed the number of parent members who are employed by the school district. And it just took.
So now there is no exception at all to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I've
Thank
got,
you, Chair.
yeah, thank you. I've got Member Bogus and then Vice Chair Wood. Vice Chair Wood.
Was it the exception that caused this to be held in committee?
Yeah, this was the big discussion with legislators. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion before us is to support HB 140, or I'm sorry, yes, HB 144, Representative Miller, School Community Council amendments. Member Lear.
Oh, we've texted her. She might come up.
And maybe you can speak to this too, Elise, but I really don't like that last change. I think that I saw too many schools over time that just so struggled to get community council members who were parent enough. And at first that really offends me that a teacher who is a parent can't be considered objective enough to also and parent enough to be on a community council with other parents. So that's always really bothered me. But what I wanted to know from someone, you or Paula, if the changes in here are they crucial beyond that? How crucial are they? It feels like there's so much there. Keep adding documentation of stuff to, oh, sorry, should I start over? And I can do it quicker. They keep adding documentation of stuff, these community councils, that I just think these are, and no offense to anybody in the way I say this, but these are kind of ma and pa kind of organizations in some schools, and they keep having to document all this stuff, and it just really bothers me. My more important point, Paula, was they've taken out the exceptions for teachers who are also parents, and I just wonder if the other changes are crucial enough that this bill is necessary, or it was that one of the main points. And I said previously, just so you'll know, I am really offended at the idea that a teacher that a teacher who's a parent cannot be a pure enough parent. That really offends me as a teacher and a parent when I was on community councils. So I just want to know how important are the other changes despite that troublesome one.
Who's that? Paula, are you answering that one, Paula?
And that's, sorry, Chair,
That's
to
fine.
Yeah.
Paula Plant.
So this bill we thought was really simple. It came out of direction from the board to try and look at board rule and code and try to simplify and clarify. And so what we sent forward additionally that was originally in the bill took out the language that you're talking about. We've run into really a lot of pushback, and there are people who are not seeing things the same way you are. In fact, I've had conversation with one individual who said they wanted teaching parents to be off the committee entirely, or else I
Or beheaded, maybe.
or else I needed to take the principal off. And so it's been a really interesting conversation and time. And so in order to get it passed, we had to reinstate that language. It's had I think this is the third substitute, even though it shows us the first substitute because the others have never been adopted. We've just used them as, are you okay with this language? Are you okay? Okay. And yeah. Does that answer?
My more important question are the other changes so crucial that you're willing to make that concession, or in your mind?
Yeah, so it's existing language. It's not changing anything right now.
That one is.
Yeah.
In not accepting that, do you still feel like the other changes are that crucial?
Yeah, the language around digital citizenship is really difficult because much of it is no longer real or relevant. The other part is we really did want that language out that tells a council what they need to do in the event there are more teaching parents and non-teaching parents, simply because it's something that happens after the election. And if councils need to be compliant in that way, they should make provisions to get the election right to start with instead of after the fact. Now we've got to remedy it. And This is probably more information than you want to know. You didn't ask the question, but I'll just share with you that language came out of a conference committee when the House and the Senate were disagreeing on something that didn't have anything to do with this. And that's the language that we got, and no one understands it. Whenever it gets applied, someone has to call and ask, what does it mean? And so we feel like that needs to come out.
Thank you. Member Earl.
If Rod were here, he'd say, please don't speak, Jenny. So, but he's not here today. So Cindy's going to say it. I just think this is the language that is there currently is important. We do want our parents, whether or not we can always get enough parents that are not educators. An educator in the school has influence already beyond the community council. And so I just think it is important that our language reflects, we really do want the parents in there. And if we have to make an exception, that's an exception. But this is what we want so that we have the engagement of our parents in the community. It doesn't discredit educators who are parents. They are allowed, they can run just like anyone else to be on this. So it allows that. Plus they have additional influence within the community or the education setting itself. So I like where we've gone.
Vice Chair Wood.
Help me understand this. This language, this isn't just if they teach at the same school. This is in the entire district. So I might be a high school teacher, 10 miles away from my elementary school child, but I am not able to, serve on this elementary. If there aren't, and if the levels aren't accurate, I am not able to serve on my child's community council with this language. What happens in these small rural communities where the school district is the primary employer?
Paula, let's get there you go.
Sorry, the very next piece talks about an exemption. That was put in the code, I believe, 2 years ago. We had been doing it, and then legal counsel here told us we shouldn't be doing it unless we had authorization from the legislature. So we did that. We got that, and then in the rule that you all passed in December, it outlines what a school has to do to receive an exemption. So one of the items there is, one of the very first items when they request an exemption is, have you tried to seat parents on the council who also teach at a different school in your district? So one of the parameters after an exception actually then allows for those parents to sit on the council because you're already in the requesting an exemption. You're trying to seat a council. Does that make it clear or am I muddy? I'm sorry.
And do we fulfill that exemption, or do you fulfill that exemption, or they're just allowed to do
there's a
this?
form that they would fill out so that it's consistent. You all had asked us make it consistent, and so there's a form that they fill out, and it lists what they need to have tried to do, like, are you holding your meetings at a time when parents can come? Are you holding it at noon, right? Some items like that, and they go through those, and then it's the local board who grants the exemption.
Thank you. So I've got a light from Member Lear. We have spent over 10 minutes on this, and I'd love to, like I said, if we need to send people to go talk to Representative Miller and say, hey, you took out what we actually were hoping to put in, then we can do that if we're not ready for a vote. I'm going to call on Member Lear, but I'd love to, we've got a lot of bills to discuss today. So Member Lear.
I'll be quick. Many of the schools in my very urban district have a really hard time filling their community councils and their PTAs and a lot of other roles. And I just cannot support something that makes it harder for these schools to get the parent voice, whatever the parent employer is. So I can't support this. And yet I heard at the very end, and this is my main, Paula saying, Paula's saying there is a way, it's very circuitous and labor intensive, but there is a way for a community council to prove that we tried all these other things and we couldn't, and it still couldn't get enough parents, so we can do this. So the exemption isn't completely gone, they've just made it very difficult. Is that accurate? Okay, that makes me feel, 40% better. Thank you.
Okay. Member Carey. Okay. Let's so the motion before us is to support HB 144, and it looks like sub 2 is the most current one. If changes are here's where I'm seeing this right now. If somebody says no, we don't want to vote yes or no on this, then we can have I don't even know if we need a substitute motion. We can, if this gets voted down, it doesn't mean that we don't support the bill. It just means that we don't support the bill, right? As is. We're not taking a no vote. But anyway, I just want to make it clear, if we need to go work on this, then we can. If it's the board's will to say, here's the issues that we have, we can go talk to the representatives as leadership. Or some of you who understand this, we can, board leadership, as we kind of discussed last time, can say, hey, go talk to Representative Miller and share our concerns. So with that and no lights, let's put the motion before the board here, and that is the motion to support HB 144, Representative Miller School Community Council amendments. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 9 in favor, 1 abstention, 4 no votes. The abstention from Member Bogus, the no votes coming from Member Booth, Member Wood, Member Hymas, and Member Lear. The next one that is up is the next motion is to approve HB 146, Representative Perucci, mentoring and supporting teacher excellence and refinement program amendments. Seeing no lights on this one, let's go ahead and vote. That passes 11 in favor, 1 abstention, 2 no votes. The abstention from Member Green, the no votes from Member Kelly and Member Bogus. Okay, Elise, do you want to keep going? I think we will.
Okay. All right, next one on our list here is SB 34 sub 1. That's from Senator Johnson.
Before you get too deep into that, I know Member Davis had a motion for all 5. We moved to divide. If you have, can we just take these one at a time?
Yep.
And I'm going to put a timer on my watch for 10 minutes, and I will interrupt at 10 minutes if the discussion is going too long and say, hey, let's see where we're at. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So this one I would normally say I would recommend to support, but this has some nuance, so I wanted to explain that. And we've looked at this one before, but there is a new substitute. So this is, if you remember back in October, we presented to the Education Interim Committee, which is chaired by Senator John Johnson, and presented some of our statutory changes. Several of those statutory change requests are in this bill. So those are great for you all. But there are a couple other things that have been added, and I want to make you aware of those. One is some language surrounding USDB. We are going to talk about another bill from Representative White in a moment that includes all of the same changes. So one recommendation could be that the board work with Senator Johnson to take out the USDB language in favor of Representative White's whole bill. The second piece that you should be aware of is, if you recall, we passed a rule about the Catalyst Center grant program. Law and licensing worked on that throughout the fall. There was some requests from throughout the state and from our own staff to rename that program because the Catalyst Center is a specific center in Davis, and we get calls all the time about that specific center, and they get calls about our grant program. So it would be nice to have them separated. And so Senator Johnson included that in his bill that it would be renamed to Apex. They also included information or other code about that program that was taken from our rule. So I don't think that there's any problem with that language. If you approve the rule, the language is almost identical in the code. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. But wanted to make those things, bring those to your attention. My recommendation would be to work with Senator Johnson for changes and then approve or vote to support at a later meeting. We're hoping so.
Okay.
You could leave it in for safekeeping.
Is there any action on this bill that any board members would like to take? Member Carey?
Thank you, Chair. May I direct this to Deputy Nui? So, and this may have changed with the substitute, but line 325, if it's the same, it references LEA setting the proficiency, I believe, definition and standard. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding that.
Do you want the substitute number there?
Yeah.
You're sorry, Greg, are you asking if we want the substitute? What's the latest?
Oh, yeah. For the Apex program?
Oh, so is it limited to the, well, let's call it up so everybody.
Yeah.
What version are you looking at on?
I think I only
That's the correct
have
one.
The non, is it the?
That's the correct
okay.
one, yeah.
Okay.
So line 325 of substitute, of the substitute version.
Oh. Mine it is too.
Yeah, mine is red too. Oh, boy.
It's Roman numeral 8.
Oh, there's a sub 2 now. Dang. Okay, so substitute 1. Line 325. So Greg, if you pull up sub 1, sorry.
I'm sorry, guys.
I'm sorry. And then it was 325.
Yes,
'Kay.
Deputy Nui. Trying to find it.
Let me try this again, Elise.
It's okay. Having issue. But board member Carey, I can chat while we're.
Yeah, you were quoting the right provision. In mine's in red, and it says a description of well-defined metrics the LEA will use to establish and measure student proficiency. And the next line is the qualifying line. This would only apply to the Apex Center.
Correct. This is the list of things that need to be included in the application.
Okay, I just wanted that clarification. I apologize that it
Oh, no.
took us 10 minutes to get there.
So
But
bad.
thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Vice Chair Wood. Yeah, you're up. Go ahead. Yep.
I move that the board support SB 34, is it sub 1? Sub 2, Senator Johnson's public education revisions, and ask that board leadership work with him regarding the USDB language.
Okay. Yeah. So the motion is that the board support SB 34 public education revisions and ask that board leadership work with the sponsor on the USDB language. It's been seconded. Back to you, Vice Chair Wood.
I think this is everything we've asked for and some clarifications on other. I'm glad, being from Davis, that our Catalyst Center will get the glory that it deserves on its own. But I think in terms of the USDB language, it is really a work, right? Is it collaborating language? Is it prioritizing 448 if it passes? So it's a movement, but I think we can support the board as a whole and work with him to see where the other one goes.
I'm going to jump in real quick before you, Member Carey, but I want to support this as well, and I want to give, not that he's listening to this meeting, but just a thanks to Senator Johnson for jumping on this and saying, look, I'm listening to the board. You've asked for this. I'm going to do this. And so it was not something that he had to do, but he did it for us. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Newey, on sub 2, I just want to make sure I'm looking through on lines 54 to 57. And maybe we need legal counsel to weigh in on this if it's there. So as I understand this, they're taking the language in the Utah Constitution and now defining that, which is nuanced from what Representative Thurston was working on last year. But I'd like to hear, if it's possible, from legal counsel saying, does this diminish this board's constitutional authority in any way? So and my concern is just that line on 56 that says, in accordance with laws the legislature makes. And again, I'm not saying it's appropriate or inappropriate. I'd just like an opinion on what does that language do in terms of our constitutional charge. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I know Superintendent Hart has a response or would like to speak to that question.
She just needs to tell me where she went to law school before she.
I'm not at all I'm gonna make that disclaimer right away. I wasn't going after that line. I think that I would like to direct the board's attention to direct and manage. And I'd like you to think about whether or not you're okay with that, because I actually think it goes in a different direction, and it may bring up some questions about local control. So I think you need to think really hard about whether or not you're okay with the word manage. I am not, to be clear, I am not saying yes or no. I'm just bringing your attention to direct and manage and what that may mean, and if you're comfortable with that as a board. Now, the business about the legislature makes, that's way above my skill set. I just want to bring attention to that word manage, and I want to make sure the board doesn't gloss over that, and make sure you're really comfortable with that.
So, Chair, if I may.
Yeah, and as she was speaking, I was kind of hoping, we've got 2 AAGs who are down, and I know Ashley's in her office, and if she's listening, maybe she's coming in or speak online, but we'll see if she comes, but go ahead and follow up.
I just want to say I support Board Member Wood's motion that I think SB 2 overall deserves our support. I would like clarification on whether this language conflicts with our constitutional charge before we vote, if we could indulge that.
So I wonder if that would be almost like an amendment to the motion, Member Carey, if you just process that. But as you're thinking about that, board members, I do want to call your attention that we have hit, I know 10 minutes goes by fast when you are enjoying the conversation. We've hit 10 minutes. And there is a motion before us. So we will continue on. But again, we have lots of bills to get through, and we want to respect every one of them that's before us. So with that, I would ask Member Carey, keep in mind if you want an amendment to the motion that's before us, and the motion is to support SB 34, And then, or with a caveat as well, that board leadership work with the sponsor on the USDB language. Vice Chair Wood.
This is the bodies. It is sub 2, and the language now matches 448. So we could remove that line if someone so chose.
That could be part of the amendment if necessary. So I've got Member Bogus. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So the language in lines 50, whatever it was, 51, 54, that's actually in direct contravention to the Constitution. The way the Constitution reads is that we have general control and supervision over the programs the legislature designates, which is very different from this language, which in my opinion is very narrow in scope. And then I think that our superintendent is correct in her assertion, direct and manage all aspects. I take issue with that language. And then when we get down to lines number 217 through 219, it says that that we are now we're authorizing the state superintendent to appoint and supervise a superintendent for the schools for the deaf and blind under the approval of the state board, which is actually not what we asked for. But we didn't appoint a state superintendent or a superintendent for USDB. We appointed an assistant superintendent or something.
The board appointed the state superintendent who made an appointment. So the options are in the bill.
Well, I understand that, but in 218, it says that she can appoint a second superintendent. That's not what we asked for her to do. Yeah, I understand that, but he's not listed as the superintendent of USDB. You are. And the way this reads, you would just be choosing somebody to do your job, and they're now called the superintendent instead of you.
Vice Chair Wood.
And when we presented our PEA recommendations to PEA, there were some legislators who felt very strongly that that person needed to have their own title. If they were going to do the work, they needed to do their title, which is why I think you see the language like this in legislation.
So then are they going to provide the money to pay that person at a superintendent salary? Mm-hmm.
Money anyway.
Yeah, would the money come out of the board's account, or would it come out of, or the agency's account, or the USDB account? The USDB account, and then along with these comments here, again, if the USBE determines to appoint a superintendent of the USDB, then they still answer to us. And if we say, hey, Superintendent Hart or any state superintendent, you are going to appoint, then she still answers to us for them, right? There's still accountability to us as a board.
Well, and I understand that, but as this is written, it doesn't fall within the structure that we have here. Superintendent Hart, tell me I'm wrong. If you appoint a superintendent, they're not technically under you. They would need to be a deputy superintendent or an assistant superintendent. They would need to be something.
Superintendent, go ahead.
I can't. The use of a title is different than the level of person I appoint. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. But maybe someone can help me. So I can appoint a person who is the title and the level of the person is two different things. It is not, I can appoint someone to be the superintendent and that be their title, even though they are an associate superintendent in the system.
Okay, so that makes sense, but what happens when you're gone and somebody decides to put this position at a director level?
They have the right to do that unless you as a board change your mind.
We still decide that.
Okay.
I do have Member Davis and Member Lear with a reminder that we have gone over time on this one. Member Davis.
I don't know if I have a motion, but I think the language, if someone is working with him on the bill, needs to just take the legislature part out of it and just say something like in that we have general control and supervision according to the Utah Constitution, including adherence to the law, period. Because it's not just the legislature. We have federal laws that we're dealing with and state code that we're dealing with, and it needs to be a wider scope than an impression that the legislature will just kind of tell us what to do. We're dealing with multiple laws. Yes, but I don't know if it's a substitute or if it's just an addition. An additional piece to work with the sponsor on.
Sorry, we're putting amendment. Am I reading this correctly? We're putting an amendment together?
Yes. I do think it needs to be written differently. I've thought that the last few years they've been doing this.
So, so your motion, you want to amend the language to support SB 34, public education revisions, and ask that board leadership work with the sponsor to amend the language about the board's constitutional role. Is that the amendment?
Yes, and it's fine to say, as in the Utah Constitution. It's also fine to say, including adherence to the law. That is what we do. But to say that we are going to function based on legislative seems to send a message that I don't think is accurate, especially when we have also federal laws.
Is this, I'm just trying to get your motion. Is this?
Because I'm speaking in the midst of the wordsmithing, I apologize.
So will you keep an eye on this? And then I believe if you're open to it, to the amendment, removing the current motion that is before us, which is removing the work with the sponsor on the USDB language.
Just combining the two?
Removing that portion. So you're amending it by removing working with the sponsor on USDB
because
language,
we no longer
but
need
rather working with the sponsor on the board's constitutional role language. That's
yes. So it would actually delete the part about the legislative. Can we pull the language up on the screen?
before.
So it would
you're still
say-
putting your motion together, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it would say general control and supervision means, including as used in the Utah Constitution, Article X, Section 3, that the state board shall direct all aspects of the public education system, including adherence with the law. And you can keep the last part in about compliance and monitoring.
So your motion is not to have board leadership work with them on this, but to say this is what we want it to say.
Yes.
Okay.
Shall I say it again?
I'm not speaking for or against. I'm trying to get our motion
Yeah, would
put
it be
together.
easy for me to read it again? I'm going to read it one more time. Oh, if you pull it back up. And you can, so it would say, general control and supervision means, including as used in the Utah Constitution, Article X, Section 3, that the state board shall direct all aspects of the public education system in accordance, or Someone just said general oversight and supervision. That's what we should write. That's what it says in the Constitution. We could use that. So that the state board shall supervise all aspects of the public education system, including adherence with the law and including relation to compliance and monitoring, or just leave out relation, just and including compliance and monitoring of an LEA under section 53E-3-401. Carol's shaking her head. But I fear if we don't put something about the law, we're going to keep doing this every year forever.
Well, let's get our motion put together here.
Yes, and then my only question is, and these were here before my motion, but do the including parts limit us to just those things? Or does the supervise all aspects of the public education system cover everything that's in the Constitution? And the including just calls these things out to give a heightened notice. Okay, thank you.
So is this complete, Member Davis?
Yes.
So the motion, and we haven't seconded, let me just put the motion before us. The motion is to remove the USDB language and that the board also work with the sponsor to amend the language on line 54 to read as follows. 5. General control and supervision means including as used in Utah Constitution, Article 10, Section 3, that the state board shall supervise all aspects of the public education system, including adherence to the law, including in relation to compliance and monitoring of an LEA under Section 53E-3-401. Is there a second? I'm not hearing a second. With that, let's move on to Member Lear.
That's a lot of time.
Can I go back to the main motion?
The main motion, yes, the motion before us currently is that the board support SB 34 public education revision and ask that board leadership work with the sponsor on the USDB language.
I move that we move on to the next item on our agenda.
There is a motion to move on to the next item. Let me ask, next bill or next agenda item?
Whatever the next thing is we would be talking about, which is probably a bill.
It's probably a bill until 4:30. Is that okay? So the motion is to move on to the next bill. We've got a second. Do you want to speak to that, Member Lear?
Briefly, there are clearly questions on many parts of this, and I think that we can still work with the sponsor, or those of you who are inclined can still work with the sponsor, but I think that will end up being a better position for the board than trying to put a bunch of Band-Aids on this bill.
I will tell you, when I see Senator Johnson and he asks about this, I can say, here's the discussion that the board had. We didn't get to a vote, but we had this discussion. So that's what I would do if nothing came of this. Next in line, I've got Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. I would speak in opposition to that. I think that this bill gives this board 95% of what we've been asking for. It's not quite there for me, but I don't want to give up on the 95% that we've worked hard. I think this bill is sponsored by the chair of Senate Ed and House Ed, that they've been so responsive to us, to our concerns, that they've listened to what we've had to say. I think to come out and say, oh, you didn't give us 1,000% of what we asked for, therefore we're not going to support all the good work you've done. I think that is the wrong message to send. And again, I I don't think we can let the perfect be the enemy of the good. In this case, possibly the very good. So I think that we shouldn't move on. I think this bill deserves our support, and I would vote against moving on. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Earl on the motion.
It's not related to this motion.
Okay. So the motion before us, Member Davis to the motion?
I just want to explain my vote. I'm just a no. I can't support that one line without it being amended.
The motion is from, yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
I'm supporting moving on.
Okay, so the motion is to move on to the next bill. Let's go ahead and put it to a vote. Okay, that motion fails. 9 opposed, 5 in favor. Those in favor being Member Reel, Member Davis, Member Green, Member Bogus, and Member Lear. And this brings us back to our motion, and that is to support HB 34 and work with the the sponsor on the language of the USDB. I've got Member Earl, then I'll come to you, Vice Chair Wood. But go ahead.
This isn't related to this one. As soon as we're done with this
Okay.
motion, I have a question.
Okay, Vice Chair Wood.
I'd like to amend my motion that the board support I move that the board support SB 34 sub 2 public education revisions and ask that board leadership work with on the constitutional language with the sponsor.
Let's make sure we get that correct on the screen. So the difference here, because we don't want to push the same motion, but the difference here is we're saying let's work with the sponsors on constitutional language, not telling them what we want as constitutional language. Is that correct? Okay. So the motion is before us. It is that the board support SB 34 public education revisions and ask that board leadership work with the sponsor on the constitutional language. Do we have a second? There's a second. Back to you, Vice Chair Wood.
I think we agree that something needs to happen, and whatever we put in there, the drafters will change anyway. So it's more important to be in the room with the sponsor and the drafters to get what we want than try to craft it here.
Okay, seeing no lights, let's vote. A question, before you get voting open, go ahead.
So it says that the board supports SB 34 sub 2, but we're also saying we want these discussions to take place. So does that mean irrespective of how these discussions turn out, the consensus of the board is we will support SB 34 as it stands now, even if the discussions don't pan out in a way that we would like?
Technically, yes. That's what we're saying. If we take a vote here in support, then we are saying we support this bill. Now, to your point, are we letting perfection get in the way of good? And is this the deal breaker? And so if we don't take a vote, if we were to move on, then we could share those concerns without saying, yeah, we support this 100%. We could just express those concerns.
And I still support the motion. I just wanted clarification. Again, to me, there's no sense in having you in the room if you can't participate in the discussions. Right. So I support. I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Vice Chair Wood. Or Vice Chair Bollinger.
Thank you. I would actually like to make an amendment that the board support in concept. Just add the word in concept. And if I can get a second, I'll speak to that.
The motion is to include in concept somewhere that the board support in SB 34 public education revisions in concept and ask that board leadership. Do we have a second to that? There's a second. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think that this language addresses the concern that we've heard Member Davis talk about with the language as it stands. It's hard to support that because we know we want changes, but we also know that there's a lot of work that's been done into this. And to Member Carey's point, we do support, about 95% of it. So I hope that this is a way that we can show we support, but there's still some work to be done.
Okay, so the motion then, this is an amendment right now. We're not voting on the overall motion. The amendment is to insert in concept after public education revisions. Or right there, support in concept SB 34. Sure, that works. So, Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would just speak against this. We've either voted to support or not support, and with the understanding that it is a give and take once you're in the room. And I think that the in concept, unless we're willing to put that in every other rule that we pass or bill that we decide to support, that isn't 100% there, I think we're sending this motion that, we say we want to talk about it, but in theory, we really don't. So I would speak against it. It's not something we've historically done, and I just don't think it's necessary. Thank you.
Okay. Member Davis, to this motion? Okay.
Yeah, I would speak for the motion. We've used this a number of times in the past on as a part of a process. So we support something conceptually, have the conversation, and then come back on Thursday and support the amended bill. If they won't change anything, and they still have our conceptual support, but it allows us to have something to still offer in hopes that a bit of that language will be fixed.
Member Lear?
I think the in concept is a reasonably good idea. It helps a little bit. I think that will be lost in the translation, and I absolutely cannot support a bill that has that language of manage and direct. That is contrary to language in the current statutes that say that the USBE cannot do certain things in working with school districts, and I think it's not the right language, not the right message to send to LEAs. So I cannot support manage and direct. So I'm afraid in concept will be lost in transition. So I want to say it helps a little, but not enough.
So the motion before us is to insert in concept after support. Let's go ahead and vote. That motion fails. 8 against, 6 in favor. Those in favor being Member Lear, Member Reel, Member Green, Member Davis, Member Wood, and Member Bollinger. So this brings us back to the motion, which states here we go, that the board support SB 34 sub 2 public education revisions and ask that board leadership work with the sponsor on the constitutional language. Seeing no votes, no lights, let's vote. That motion passes 11 in favor, 3 opposed. Those opposed being Member Davis, Member Bogus, and Member Lear. Member Earl.
Yeah, I asked that we go to House Bill 36. This is the gold medal schools. If that's okay, Representative Hall asked a very specific question of this board, and I wanted to pose that question so we can decide what we want to do.
Elise, or, I mean, you put the motion forward to support HB 36. Can we get some context, some background?
I would like to pose it as a different question. It's not necessarily support or oppose. The question is if the board wants to have their name associated with the gold medal schools, and I'll explain why. The health department has received grant money from the federal government. There's $3 million of that money that will be put into rural schools as far as health initiatives. They've contacted Representative Hall and said, we'd like to use that money for your gold medal schools provisions that she has here. Currently, it has us listed as overseeing that. She wants to know if we want to be part of that. If not, then the health department is who she will write into the bill. So the question is, do we want to oversee this in the rural schools, or do we want the health department to be overseeing this in our rural schools? And whatever we decide here, she will put into the bill. Currently, she would like the USBE to oversee it, but that's the question being posed. The money is coming to it is a grant coming to, and maybe someone else can speak a little bit more to it. I know broadly, the money is coming to the health department they've got a large grant that they're getting. And so they're the recipients of it. They're wanting or at least they contacted Katie Hall to fund her gold medal school. So if we have additional questions, Deputy Superintendent Voorhees could ask those. I don't have all the details. I'm just sharing what Katie Hall asked me to ask you guys.
Right. I think Superintendent Hart has a comment as well.
Yes, so the money is part of a huge grant for rural health that comes from the U.S. Department of Education. Just to put it out there on the table, I am concerned that this would direct activities that happen in our schools without our involvement if we choose not to participate. I do understand that the money is coming to us from the federal government, but it is not coming to us. It is coming to DHHS. And so when Representative Hall, she tried running this bill last year, and she was unable to, they just ran out of time, quite frankly. This year, she was looking for funding. She is the chair of Health and Human Services, and she saw this grant cross her desk for their agenda, and she did one of those, chocolate peanut butter kind of thing. As part of this grant, part of the money would be the staff needed to oversee this, because one of my concerns was if we do face a cut, then I don't want obligations that don't cover themselves. But this would include the staffing needed to implement this program. Again, I have serious reservations about having DHHS. They're great. They are a state agency, but they're not USBE, but they would be implementing a program in our schools. And I just have some serious reservations about that outweigh my concerns over where this money came from. So.
I've got a couple in line here. I've got Member Davis, Member Lear, and Vice Chair Wood as well. Member Davis.
I think if we voted to support to bring this over, then I think we need to change our letter to the federal government. I mean, did we mean it or did we not mean it? Because already since we took that position, you know, we had Congressman Owens wanted us to advocate for the federal dollars for private schools. Can't do that. Sent a letter. We've had talk from some of our legislators. We want to use some of our federal dollars for safety. Can't do it. Sent a letter. We have other red states applying for grants. Can't do it. Sent a letter. Now this PE grant coming in, if DHHS did not send a letter, that's probably where it should go. Or we need to take some kind of formal position or some position that says sometimes we want it with strings and sometimes we don't, because this is, and I'm not saying this to be funny. Well, I'm not saying it to be funny. I'm saying it to be consistent. So we just need to figure out where our consistencies are. Do we want to have the message that our official position is nothing with strings? Or do we want to have nothing new with strings, I should say? Hopefully that letter didn't mean we would send back everything we already have. But I just think we need to either change the language on our position from the letter or do things like this. But doing them both feels inconsistent to me.
Member Lear?
I have to say a little facetiously, why is consistency even a concern? But I'm glad you're talking to somebody else. Anyway, because you're sincere. My take on it is similar, but for a different reason. We've had other pots of money go to other places where agencies work with schools. And every time in my recollection, the agencies bring their challenges to us anyway, because we have the data, we have the relationships. They do not. That we understand laws related to schools. They do not. And so what I fear is if we say, let it go to DHHS or whatever, despite our letter to the feds, and I don't know what we do about that. I don't have an opinion. I don't really have an opinion about the bill. I just know that if it goes to DHS, it will be our burden anyway. And that is something I've seen many times. A bill went to the Division of Human Resources, and suddenly it was our problem. And we did more work than the Division of Human Resources until 5 years later, the legislature, against its will, gave us the responsibility. I've seen other things go to DHS and have the same outcome. So it doesn't, we can't have our cake and eat it too.
Vice Chair Wood?
Can we just scroll down so we look at what the role of the board would be? I think it starts in 130. So this is a 3-year. Is the grant for 3 years? Make Chair through you.
Yeah.
To the
Who are you asking, Elise or
whoever knows
or
about
Jenny?
this grant.
Make her the motion. Go ahead. Or there is no motion.
The grant is a 5-year grant. Okay, so the money. So we have sufficient funding to, like it says that we would get 6.25% at the bottom to for administrative costs, and then we would have to create the program, establish partnerships, create the process. So it's putting. So does our staff feel comfortable in taking this on? And otherwise, this bill will be rewritten and it will go over to the body that does not have our health standards, does not have our relationships, does not understand the time commitment to our parents, our educators. Okay, thank you.
Member Earl?
Here's $3 million a year, and then there would be a provision that some funds would come to us. It's either if we're not interested, then, like I said, someone else will take it. So
So I recognize that you were asking a question, and the question, I don't know if it's been answered, but we need something in the form of a motion so that we can act
Okay.
as a
I
body.
think, okay, we have a motion, I believe.
Okay.
Right, so it would be that the board support Representative Hall, including USBE, as overseeing the federal rural health grant through the Gold Medal Schools program in House Bill 36, Gold Medal Schools pilot program.
Thank you. The motion has been stated. It's before us on the screen. Do we have a second? There's a second. Back to you, Member Earl, if you want to speak to that.
Sorry. I mean, I've already kind of introduced some of that. I just, like I said, Representative Hall reached out to me a couple of times saying, hey, because I had discussions with her last year. She goes, I've got funding. Are you guys on board? I said, well, we can't be on board unless the board is on board. So I said, I'll just bring this to the board, and then from there, if there's additional discussion, we can have that with her, leadership can or whoever. So, anyways, and I just think once again, it's going to move forward. The funding's available. We either have a direct say in it, or someone else will be directing it.
Okay. So I've got a couple of lights. I'd love to get to a vote sooner than later. Member Bogus and then Member Carey.
So my question is, by supporting that she include us, are we taking a position of support on this bill? Is that going to be implied? Because that's not what the motion says.
That's not what the motion says, but I think a reasonable person would say yes.
Well, technically it would say that we think she's a cool gal.
Do you have a motion or an amendment to this motion?
Well, I'm just wondering what we actually intend, because if we intend to say, yeah, we think this is a bad idea, but if you're going to pursue a bad idea, put it under the USBE, that's very different than saying, yes, put it under the USBE and we like it.
That's true. This
And to
motion
me,
as is
this
does not
doesn't-
say that we support the bill. It just says we support us being in the bill.
Okay, so this would not be taken by our leadership in support of the bill.
Leadership would say the board supports Representative Hall, including USBE as overseeing. You know what I mean? You get the point. That's what leadership would say.
So you're not going to tell her we support this bill?
Yeah. Go ahead, Superintendent. I don't plan to speak against what we voted for.
No.
Okay. As far as I'm concerned, this issue has to be decided so that Representative Hall can move forward with her bill and know which way she was going. Whether or not you want to do another motion to support or not, we need this to be good neighbors with the dear Representative Hall. We need to give her an answer. Then if you want to go one way or another on supporting the bill as a whole, that's up to you. She's waiting for an answer on yes, no. I will not tell Representative Hall that what comes out of my mouth is not going to be a yes, we support the bill or no, we don't support the bill. It will be simply whether or not we want USBE in.
Okay, thank you.
Member Carey.
I support the motion. I spoke with the superintendent. I just wanted to make sure this would not be taxing or super taxing on our staff and our resources. She's assured me that this is actually a good direction to go to avoid that from happening. So I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional lights, let's re-tee this up. The motion before the board is that the board support Representative Hall, including USBE, as overseeing the federal rural health grant through the Gold Medal Schools program in HB 36, Gold Medal Schools pilot program. Let's vote. Thank you, Member Brinton. That motion passes 12 in favor, 2 opposed. Those opposed coming from Member Davis and Member Kelly. Vice Chair Wood. I will say as well, we've got kind of a time sensitive. We've got somebody joining us at 4:30 for our executive session. So let's, Member Wood, go ahead. You've got the.
I move that the board support HB 448 Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind amendments.
Okay, the motion's been stated and seconded. Vice Chair Wood.
This bill originates from Representative White. He brought me in, and we basically went through our entire document that we approved as a board that went to PEA when we made those USBE recommendations to PEA. He went line item by line item. We sat there with the drafters and went, okay, what does this mean? What does the board want? How can we put it in a law? What does it mean? How do we put this in a law? He's met with leaders. When I was out of town, he met with leadership and superintendent to confirm that he had gotten it right. He then met with me again. I think everything we've asked for, including if you look on lines 253, that acknowledgement that we have a statewide multi-campus model, the legislature will have to finally commit to that wholly, that they support that. There may be some changes in the component unit. There's some debate on subdivision is not fully defined in law other than a political subdivision like a mosquito abatement or a school district, which they are not. So we went to a component unit. Now that's a GASB term, and so we're trying to figure that out. So you might see a slight amendment when it comes to the committee. But other than that, he's done a really great job. I've never had a legislator who's worked so hard to give us exactly what we want.
Member Kelly.
It's not to this motion, but if you could put me in line for the next.
Okay, but we might have to make a motion to continue on this agenda item, just a heads up. So we've got the motion to the motion to support HB 448 Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind amendments. I don't see any additional lights. Let's go ahead and vote. Member Brenton?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, that passes unanimously with 2 absent. So, Member Kelly, we'll start it. We might have to table it. Okay, so go ahead then. Let's push your button.
I move that that the board vote to oppose HB 36 Gold Medal Schools pilot program. Sure.
The motion is to oppose HB 36. Is there a second? A second. Go ahead, Member Kelly.
Just to Board Member Davis's point, if we're going to be a board that says that we want to start to be autonomous as a state, then we need to start acting as an autonomous organization. And so anytime a carrot is dangled in front of us, I think it's important for us to recognize that carrot is not necessarily something that we're always going to eat.
Okay, so the motion is to oppose HB 36. Let's go ahead and vote. Member Brenton? That motion fails, 9 against, 2 abstentions, 3 in favor. Those abstentions coming from Member Brinton and Member Davis. The yes votes from Member Green, Member Kelly, and Member Bogus. With that, board members, I know that we could spend all day on bills, and we will do our best to get as many as we can on Thursday. Please, sorry, Elise, harass Elise, get the information that you can, and then it will be outdated by the time we get to board meeting. So I know it's very challenging, right? And even today you saw we were scrambling to get different subs and things in front of us. So gather what you can, and we'll prepare for next Thursday.